I've always preferred solitude. No office politics, no customers, just me, my rig, and the hum of the open road. All I need to do is get from point A to B, and since I'm paid per mile, I don't mind the long cross-state treks. The only downside is that I don't see my home nearly as often, but when I do, I make sure to spend as much time as I can with my family and friends. Besides that, I love blasting music, eating greasy fast food, and driving through the beautiful scenery America has to offer. But lately, the road hasn't felt as peaceful. I don't know when it started. Maybe a few weeks ago? Maybe months. It's hard to tell. Some nights, the highway feels different. Longer, emptier. Like I'm driving through a place that doesn't quite exist. I figured it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. That happens when you push yourself too hard. That's why I started setting timers to pull over and nap every few hours. Sleep deprivation turns the brain into an unreliable narrator, and I have no interest in waking up wrapped around a telephone pole. But even with the rest breaks, something about tonight felt off. It started small. I thought my radio was acting up. I was driving through the middle of nowhere when my CB switched off, and I heard faint chatter. Just a soft murmur beneath the hum of the engine. I reached for the dial, thinking maybe a signal had bled through. But the moment my fingers touched it, silence. It scared the hell out of me. But I knew better than to let my mind wander. Hallucinations happen when you're sleep deprived. That's why I stick to my rest schedule, even if it means delaying deliveries. I wasn't about to let fatigue get the best of me. A few minutes later, I heard it again. A whisper of static. A voice crackling through the quiet, just barely loud enough to catch. It was like someone had picked up a transmission on the edge of the range. I listened harder, leaning toward the speaker. The voice wasn't speaking English. It wasn't speaking any language I knew. I turned the CB on, scanning through the channels. Nothing. Just empty air. That should have been the end of it. Just a faulty radio. That's what I told myself. But then, the voices came from somewhere else. The passenger seat. I heard my name. No, I felt my name. Not out loud. Not like someone calling from another room, but as if the suggestion of sound had brushed the back of my mind. A whispered thought that wasn't my own. A chill crawled up my spine. I gripped the wheel tighter, flicking my eyes towards the empty seat. My duffel bag was buckled in, my thermos resting against it. Nothing out of place. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was sitting there. My stomach twisted. I knew it wasn't real. I knew it. But the sensation lingered, like the ghost of a hand brushing against my arm. I blinked hard, forcing my focus back to the road. It's just my exhaustion, I told myself. Just my mind playing tricks on me. But that's what scared me the most. My dad had been a sharp one. A man who could play the piano with his eyes closed, never needing a calendar, always remembering every school event. Then, in his early 40s, he started forgetting things. Small things at first, where he left his keys, the name of a town he passed through 100 times. Then, one day, he forgot how to drive. Early onset Alzheimer's. Runs in the family. And now, here I was, hearing things that weren't there. I clenched my jaw, gripping the wheel tighter. It's just fatigue. I had to believe that. because the alternative, that was something I wasn't ready to face. After a while, everything seemed to settle. The rain started drumming against the windshield, steady and restless, blurring the world beyond the wipers. I rubbed my eyes with one hand, keeping the other firm on the wheel. The miles stretched endlessly, an unbroken ribbon of wet pavement cutting through the dark. Then, I flinched. The sound was unmistakable. The passenger seatbelt had just fastened itself. My heart lurched into my throat. My gaze snapped to the belt, now pulled taut against the empty seat. I swallowed thickly. The truck hit a bump, jolting slightly, and the belt tightened, like something was sitting there. For a long, terrible moment, I just stared at it. The belt remained locked, stiff, secure, as if someone invisible had just settled in for the ride. A deep, gnawing chill crept down my spine. I was alone, but something was buckled in. I reached over, hesitated for half a second, then unbuckled it. The belt snapped back into place with a sharp whip. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Probably just a sensor issue. Just exhaustion. Just my imagination. I tried to believe that. For a moment, everything was fine. Just keep driving. I glanced at the clock on the dash. 1:43 a.m. Still a couple of hours from the nearest rest stop. I sighed and reached for my coffee, but it had long gone cold. As I maneuvered around potholes, something glistened ahead. Roadkill, maybe. At least, I thought it was roadkill. I slowed my truck as I got closer, narrowing my eyes against the rain. It was a deer, lying on its back just off the road, its legs stiff and pointing towards the sky. The downpour made it hard to see, but something about it looked especially wrong. Its neck was mangled, strands of muscle and sinew exposed where the head should have been. I assumed it had been torn off in a collision, but as I kept looking, my stomach twisted. The chest and abdomen had been carved open, hollowed of all of its organs. It was disgusting, to say the least. But I chalked it up to a deer falling prey to a bear. Yet, as I studied the scene, I realized this wasn't the work of a wild animal. The body was too clean. No gore, no scattered organs, just a hollowed out shell. Its ribcage exposed, its insides missing, like they had been scooped out with surgical precision. The hide along its back was peeled open, a long, deliberate slit running down its spine. The edges of the wound weren't fresh. They had been seared shut. And inside, nothing. Just an empty, black void where life used to be. I pressed the gas, eager to put distance between me and the carcass. But just as I glanced in my mirror, my stomach dropped. Something was stepping into the deer's hollowed chest. It looked almost human-shaped. But the neck was too long, the shoulders too broad. My heart stalled as I watched it slowly descend into the cavity. Then the deer jerked, Not like a dying animal. Not like something taking its last breath. Like something inside was testing the controls. Its front legs slammed onto the pavement, stiff and awkward, as if they had locked into place. The back legs twitched, then kicked out all at once, sending the body into a brief, unnatural spasm. Then, in one violent motion, it stood. I slammed my foot against the gas pedal, barreling down the road. Whatever I had just seen was fucking horrifying. And I wasn't about to stick around to see what it would do next. After a few minutes of reckless speed, I forced myself to calm down and drive safely. I tried to rationalize what I had just experienced. It had to be a hallucination. A trick of exhaustion and paranoia. The darkness, the rain, my overworked brain. It all made sense. I was just going a little crazy from lack of sleep. Then I heard the clacking. It was impossibly loud. Clack, clack, clack. The sharp rhythm of hooves striking the pavement sent a surge of cold terror through my veins. Tears welled in my eyes as I dared to look to the side. Beside my truck, moving impossibly fast, was the same headless deer. Its body contorted with rage, its bones pushing through the skin as it ran. From the hollowed chest, long black hair flowed wildly in the wind. I slammed my foot onto the gas again, praying I could get away. 50 miles per hour. 60. 70. I pushed past 80, but it didn't matter. The deer matched my speed effortlessly, almost tauntingly, as it kept the same distance beside my truck, screeching with every step. Then, it closed the gap. I barely had time to react before two gaunt, skeletal arms emerged from the deer's chest. Each finger ended in a curved, claw-like nail. The creature reached out, slamming its talons into my truck door, piercing through the metal like wet paper. My stomach turned as it clung to the side of the truck and pulled itself further out of the deer's chest, its upper body clawing free. Not just pulling, tearing. The deer's ribcage snapped like brittle wood, splitting apart as the thing inside forced itself loose. Strands of flesh and sinew stretched between them, clinging, resisting, like the body didn't want to let it go. The deer collapsed onto the road behind me, swallowed by darkness. I had no clue what to do. My instincts took over, and I started swerving left and right, trying to shake it off. But it held on, climbing and clawing its way to the roof of my truck. Then, slowly, it lowered itself over the windshield. That's when I saw its face. And it was fucking disgusting. Its skin was deathly pale, stretched tight over sunken cheeks. Its hollow, dead eyes bore into me, every muscle in its face twisted with unrelenting hatred. The moment our eyes met, it screamed. The sound wasn't just loud. It was unbearable. My skull felt like it was splitting open. My eardrums popped, a sharp burst of pain exploding inside my head. blood dripped from my nose. My vision swam, the world tilting sideways. Then, it started slamming its head against the windshield, over and over and over. Each impact sent web-like cracks through the glass, larger and larger, until... The thing punched through the windshield, and its claws wrapped around my throat. I couldn't breathe, and my vision darkened as my grip on the steering wheel weakened. I tried slamming on the brakes, hoping the sudden stop would send it flying, but it held on with monstrous strength. My hands fell from the wheel. Without my guidance, the truck veered off the road. And then, nothing. When I started to come to, I tasted blood pooling in my mouth. A sharp, crushing pain bloomed in my chest as my senses slowly returned. Smoke clung to the air, thick and acrid, burning my throat with every shallow breath. My head throbbed, and when I tried to move, a bolt of pain shot through my ribs. I forced my eyes open. My truck was wrecked, and the front end crumpled around a massive tree. Steam and smoke curled from the destroyed hood. The windshield shattered into jagged pieces. A deep gash throbbed along my forehead, and my hands trembled as I tried to push myself up. I looked down at my torso. Lodged deep inside was a large metal fragment, where blood slowly drained from the wound. It was when I looked up that I saw it. Pinned against the hood of my truck and the tree was a long, gangly leg. The skin was sickly pale, stretched taut over knotted tendons. The limb twitched, but the rest of the creature was nowhere to be seen. I sucked in a ragged breath, my entire body screaming in pain as I searched for my phone. My fingers were slick with blood as I fumbled beneath the seat, finally brushing against the shattered screen. It was barely functional. With crimson dripping from my hands, I wiped the screen clean enough to see the numbers. 911. I hit the call button, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The dial tone droned in my ear, dull and distant beneath the haze of adrenaline and exhaustion. My vision swam, my pulse pounding like a war drum against my skull. Then, after what felt like an eternity, 911, what's your emergency? Relief crashed over me, so sudden and overwhelming that it almost drowned out the searing pain from the gashes across my body. My words tumbled out, frantic and uneven. I was attacked. Some kind of animal. My truck got run off the road and I crashed into a tree. I need medical help now. Bring guns. I think it's still close. I forced myself to keep it vague. The last thing I needed was to sound insane and have them hang up on me. Sir, are you injured? The voice was steady and practiced, but I could hear a hint of urgency. Yes. Yeah, I think so. I'm bleeding. My head. My chest. I don't know how bad, but I have a piece of metal lodged in my stomach. I can barely move. Okay, stay with me. Can you tell me your location? I sucked in a shaky breath, forcing myself to look around. The highway was a blur of rain and darkness, my truck's headlights barely cutting through the mist. I was heading south on Route 19. Maybe 20 miles past the last rest stop. I don't know exactly where. That's okay. We'll track your phone's GPS. A few keystrokes clicked through the line. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me, okay? I nodded before realizing they couldn't see me. Okay. A few seconds passed, then. Sir, you mentioned an animal. Can you describe it? I hesitated. My throat tightened. Do I tell them? I gripped the phone tighter, pulse hammering. It wasn't normal. It looked like a deer, but it was wrong. It didn't have a head, and there was... I stopped myself. The truth sounded insane, even in my own ears. It ran my truck off the road, I said instead. It might still be out there. There was another pause, just a little too long. Then the operator's voice returned, softer this time. Understood. Just stay put, sir. Emergency services are en route. But in the silence that followed, something else filled the space. A sound, high-pitched and angry. A loud screech that permeated the forest that my truck was now stuck in. It was so loud, the operator on the other side of the line could hear it too. Sir, what was that? I could barely process the question. My breath hitched as I clutched the phone tighter, my fingers slick with sweat and blood. It's... My voice caught in my throat. My body refused to move, every instinct screaming at me to stay still. It's here. The line went quiet, but I could hear the tension in the operator's breathing. Sir, do you have a weapon? I swallowed hard, glancing around the wreckage of my cab. My pocket knife, too small to do anything useful, was in the glove compartment. But my hands were shaking so badly I wasn't sure I could even hold it. My truck was dead, my body was battered, and I was stranded alone in the dark with that thing. Then I heard more noise. The underbrush rustled. Twigs snapped. The shadows shifted between the trees. My pulse jackhammered against my ribs. I struggled to move, pushing against the crushed door. But my body screamed in protest. Too slow. Too weak. From the darkness, slowly limped forward a shape. Tall, gaunt, watching. Just beyond the reach of my truck's flickering headlights, something stood at the tree line. Its frame was impossibly thin. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The skin was a sticky, corpse-like gray, stretched too tight over sharp bones. But it was the eyes that made my stomach drop. Two hollow, cavernous pits, black as the void, staring straight at me. I couldn't breathe. couldn't move. The operator's voice crackled through the line, barely a whisper over the static. "Sir, are you still there?" Her words acted like a trigger for the beast. It got down on its hands and started racing its way towards the truck, screeching at the same time. I screamed in terror as I used every ounce of strength to reach for my glove box. I forced it open, and with shaky hands, I managed to grab and flip open the knife. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. Looking back at the creature, all I saw was a blur of sickly gray limbs, its body contorting unnaturally as it closed the distance in a fraction of a second. The truck shuddered violently as the creature slammed its body against the side, metal groaning under the impact. A long, skeletal arm lunged through the shattered window, clawed fingers grasping blindly for me. Adrenaline flooded my veins. With a raw, desperate burst of strength, I lunged, gripping my knife tight, and drove the blade deep into its gangly arm. A piercing shriek tore from its throat. A sound so unnatural, it made my skull feel like it was splitting. But it didn't stop. It clawed at me, and I fought back, both of us thrashing and tearing at each other like wild animals. Eventually, the beast had enough, and it pulled its arms back through the window and started to sprint away back into the night. Tears lined my cheeks as I started to fade back into unconsciousness. The last thing I heard was some unintelligible words from the operator. Sir, the police and the ambulance will be there momentarily. Hang on, we will be there shortly. I woke to blinding light. A harsh, sterile glow burned through my eyelids, pulling me from the depths of unconsciousness. A sharp tang of antiseptic filled my nostrils, mixing with the steady beep, beep, beep of machines. I was alive. Dazed, I turned my head, my gaze adjusting to the unfamiliar white walls of a hospital room. Tubes ran from my arms, and an IV drip hung beside me. I could barely think past the fog in my skull. Then, I tried to move. A sharp, stabbing ache bloomed in my ribs, and something felt off. I couldn't feel anything below my chest. My breath hitched. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the thin hospital blanket. But I didn't have the heart to look. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, my mind numb, my body wrecked. But despite the pain, despite the fear creeping up my throat, I was grateful to be alive. Days passed in a blur of medication, whispered conversations, and restless sleep. Doctors came and went, their voices distant as they discussed my injuries. A shattered ribcage, deep lacerations, nerve damage. The prognosis wasn't great, but I was lucky to be alive. My truck was totaled. Emergency responders had found me unconscious, bleeding out in the wreckage. The official report called it a wild animal attack. They assumed a bear or some rabid predator had forced me off the road. I asked about the severed leg that had been stuck between the truck and the tree, but I was told that nothing of the sort was found, so I didn't argue. What else could I say? That I had been hunted by something inhuman? That I'd watched it crawl out of a headless deer's chest and tear through my truck like paper? They'd think I was insane, so I kept my mouth shut. Even as I lay there, recovering, the memories didn't fade. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That sickly, gray skin. Those hollow, black eyes. The screech that made my skull rattle. My dreams were filled with flickering headlights and the endless clack of hooves on wet pavement. A little over a month later, I was discharged. The doctor said my mobility would take some time to return, but I was already regaining some feeling in my lower body. The nerve damage hadn't been as bad as they feared. With therapy, I'd walk again. That was the first bit of good news I'd had in a long time. My best friend, David, picked me up from the hospital. He helped me into the passenger seat of his truck, eyeing my injuries with a grimace. "Jesus, man," he muttered, shaking his head. "You really got torn up. They said a bear did this?" I hesitated. My mouth felt dry. "Something like that." David didn't push. He just nodded, put the truck in gear, and drove. The ride home was quiet. The rain drizzled against the windshield, the wipers dragging across the glass in slow, rhythmic swipes. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. The place was exactly how I left it. Small, tucked away on the edge of town, surrounded by miles of thick forest. The kind of place where neighbors were a 10-minute drive away, and the nights were silent, besides the infrequent sound of the wildlife. David helped me inside, made sure I had everything I needed, then left me to rest. I collapsed onto my bed, my body screaming for relief. I tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't. I thought it was just my paranoia. My nerves were still shot, and my brain was still wired from everything that had happened. Then I heard it. A sound, faint and carrying through the trees. It was a high-pitched, shrill screech. Every muscle in my body went rigid. A sharp pulse of fear crashed through me. But this time, I wasn't trapped in a wrecked truck. This time, I was ready. I reached beside my bed, fingers wrapping around the cold steel of my shotgun. If that thing had followed me here, it wouldn't leave alive.